In overhead, you can see that we have labor, equipment, and general expenses. Labor is your admin, your office, people that are not in the field, people that are not producing revenue. You can see here that I have owner in here and a salary for that. You can also see in our cost of goods, I also have an owner here. So an owner operator, they're in the field and they're also doing all the admin tasks in this mock business here that I've created. It's important that you have yourself in here as the owner. The business pays you. The net profit of what the business makes is not what you make. That's what the business makes. And it's a very clear distinction between the two. And the sooner that you separate yourself from the business, the better it is for the financial well-being of your business as well as yourself. And for this, for you as the owner, is more so a budgeted amount. I don't care what you pay yourself, even if it's less than what you put in here, but you should be thinking of a fair market value for the tasks that you do to input in here. And you can see that we have salary here, which is yearly, and not on our cost of goods, which is hourly. Once again, when I put my hourly wage in here, it's not necessarily what I'm paying myself, but it's a fair market value for what it would cost me to replace myself in the field specifically. Same thing with overhead. I look at all the different tasks that I do, like a part-time designer, part-time sales. If I'm doing my own bookkeeping, a part-time bookkeeper, part-time admin, a part-time estimator. And I look at what it would cost me for each of these positions, but specifically in part-time roles, and add those all up and put them in here as a salary. And that's how I go about creating a budgeted amount for replacing myself in what it would cost me in my business. You see that we have our hours here and our salary. These you don't need to ever edit. You can just do it as salary. So maybe it's a part-time admin person. You can just put them in here as 25,000, drag down those hours, and that's not going to change anything. So you really don't need to edit this green field. Same thing, we need to add our labor burden percentage. It will be less than your field labor, especially if there's no bonuses or anything like that for production, because the insurance cost of office staff is much less than those in the field doing the work. But once again, talk to your accountant. And you'll get your breakdown of total overhead labor burden and a percentage of revenue. Now we're going to move over to equipment. And equipment gets applied to every project if it's in overhead. So overhead is recovered on every project. We don't need to assign it to projects. So you could essentially put in all of your equipment in here that you want assigned to every single project. So you don't have to assign them specifically yourself whenever you quote a project, but it will throw off your gross profit margin, because your gross profit margin will be higher if all of your cost of goods equipment is in overhead, which is another reason why you shouldn't listen to other people's numbers. Know your own business and what you are doing in your business. Because if you hear people say I'm 60% profitable, well, is that gross or net? Are you including your own owner's salary in that, or is what you are thinking is net profit as your own salary? And are you incorporating equipment as cost of goods or overhead? Like, there's so many different ways that you can twist your own numbers. It's just best that you know your own and know why you're charging what you are charging. So for me, anything over $500, same thing with cost of goods equipment. Anything over $500, I consider a piece of equipment. Anything under $500, I consider a tool, and I'll add them as general expenses as tools down here and lump them all together as a sum. But for equipment, anything over $500, and that's just because where I am, anything over $500 is a depreciating asset and is not 100% tax deductible in the calendar year. Anything under $500 is a tool and is 100% deductible in the calendar year. So even a computer, office equipment, anything like that, I'll put them in here. You can even put in your goals for your business. So you want a goal of a down payment for a skid steer. Put it in $30,000. I want that in 3 years. So every year it's going to add $10,000 throughout that year to all the projects that I'm quoting. So you can start to really plan for your goals in the future by doing this. This could be like a sales truck. Maybe you just use a truck for sales and put that in here. Once again, this is not labor producing equipment. And with that, you'll get your total overhead equipment and a percentage of revenue. You'll also notice we don't have utilization rate in here because overhead equipment is applied to every single project. It does not need to be added to specific projects, so we don't need a utilization rate. Where that utilization rate really applies to is equipment that rarely gets used or doesn't get used a whole lot. For example, my GeoRipper, I might use that like once a year. So in that case, my utilization rate, if I use it for a day per year and we have let's say we have 100 days. So I use that 1% of the time. All of a sudden my cost per hour is 22.29 for that equipment. And now I'm appropriately charging that specific client for that cost in that. And the last thing we want to cover is our general expenses. So we have our expenses all listed out here. You can go through it line by line. You can even add things if you need to for this, but what do you need to recoup for this? This can be based on last year. Add a little bit for this year as well for your growth if that's important. Things like advertising or marketing, that's more of a budgeted amount, but usually accounting, you know what you're going to pay for that year. Business liability insurance, building insurance, all these different things, rent, you should know what to put in there based on a consistent amount year after year, or maybe a little bit of inflation on top of that. Taxes is a big one. What is the business going to pay in taxes? So you'll want to input that there so you get a clean net profit. Otherwise, your net profit gets taxed and you might lose a whole bunch of your net profit due to that.